Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of the Rising Through Grief podcast. I am so happy to have you all here, and I'm so excited to have you here too, Andy. Andy and I have known each other for quite some time, the past 4 years, and our kids are in the same homeschool group, so we've gotten very close over the years. And I have you here today because you have lost a few people in your life, especially recently, and I wanted to bring you here to talk about that a little bit. And we're gonna do something a little different. We're going to talk about what happened. We're going to talk about the healing process and what's helped you heal. And we're also going to discuss what people have said or done that has helped you during the healing process, because that's a very important topic and one I get asked about a lot these days. And, even though I've experienced loss myself and I've witnessed people going through it, sometimes I am even at a loss of like what I can do to help people through the process and show my support. So I think it's good for people to hear it over and over again so we can kind of get used to that and get used to asking people what they may need, or sometimes maybe know ahead of time, because sometimes people can't talk about it in the moment. So anyway, Andy, do you want to get started on your story and what you have to share?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Yeah, my story. So I was really thinking about going over my life and thinking about different losses. And I've been one of those people who've had a lot of losses through my life, but I decided to focus on, where my identity shifters were with loss, because there's so many different levels of loss and you process it in so many different ways. I was listening to a few of your podcasts prior to mine, and I was thinking about how each one is so different and unique, and some hit you more than others do. And there's really no rhyme nor reason to it. You may be a little closer to somebody or you may not be. There's just certain things that happen that kind of spark the loss a little deeper. So the two, kind of areas that I thought I would kind of share with everybody was back in my 30s. I had four miscarriages, and two of them were pretty late. And that kind of started me out on an identity shifter where I've always been a spiritual seeker, but after those losses happened in my life, I really was seeking some answers, and it really just sent me on a spiritual journey of trying to just seek and understand and come to better understanding of how to heal myself and how my journey could go. And it got me really realizing about how people respond and react, because people don't really know what to say when these circumstances happen. This topic isn't discussed much among people. It feels like it's kind of a taboo subject. Either people are really uncomfortable talking about it, or
Mhm.
they're very not, like you said, not knowing what to say. So my story started out with the miscarriages, and I went on a journey there, and I ended up having my daughter. Now she's 13. And then this past summer, last June, my family went through several actually losses. It all kind of started out with my aunt. My aunt passed away very suddenly. She was just in her mid 60s, unexpected. We didn't get a chance to say goodbye. 2 days later, my mom ended up in the hospital. My mom does have a little bit of a backstory that I'll go ahead and share with you guys. She, back a few months prior to that, had some problems where she had a spot come up on her back, and she went in and got it taken off, and it ended up being melanoma. The doctors were very what's the word? They were very optimistic about it. We weren't told that it was going to be, the end of anything. A
Mhm.
few weeks later, after that, she had discovered that she had had some early stages of some breast cancer cell growth that was coming on as well. But everybody, all the doctors were so positive in saying, treatment, this will be easy. These are all caught at the beginning. Everything was really, really good. So, fast forward a few months, my aunt passed. A couple days later, my mom ended up in the hospital, and we thought it was going to, be able to be a routine check, or, they were going to be able to help her. She was in a lot of pain.
Mhm.
And it ended up being a story where I got a call from the doctor saying I only had a few hours, and then I needed to get people, to come to say our goodbyes to her.
Mm.
And at the time, I didn't really understand exactly what had happened because she had done a one immunotherapy treatment. And we were very confused. We had just started our journey with everything. My mom obviously was on another mission than we all thought, and it was time for her to go.
Mm.
But the story there that I really wanted to share with everybody is what a beautiful story for my mom. My mom was a real big believer in the afterlife. And we had lost many, all my grandparents prior to all this, except for one grandparent at this point. And so my mom had done a lot of studying and she stayed really true to that. And what was really amazing is all of her goodbyes that she did. So the people that we were able to get to the hospital in time, like my dad was still around at this point, and my daughter, my husband, and her best friend, that kind of stuff. It was quick, but what was amazing about it that she really, in the midst of her pain, she got herself together and she really connected with each person and really gave a message to every single one about how she's going to help them from the other side, and that how this is a different way for her to be able to help people even more than she was now, and
Mm.
how much she loved everybody and how important it was that we kept loving and just living life. And her message was so just incredible during that time that I really wanted to share that with everybody because that isn't always the case. It felt very sudden for us because, it was different than, let's say, somebody saying it was a car accident or they never got to say goodbye. So my story feels sudden, but yet it doesn't in some regard because I was able to get, my last goodbye, and same with all of our family. And my mom held on until, she was able to do the immediate family like that.
Mhm.
So that threw us into my dad, who a couple years before that had been diagnosed with advanced stages of prostate cancer. And he was getting to the end of his fight. And so, a lot of times I think about with my mom in some higher way, she was ready to go. My mom and dad have been married since they were 18, their whole life, 17, I think is what it was.
Mhm.
And so it would have been hard for them to be apart from each other. So it threw me into caregiving for my dad. Those last few weeks, I got hospice involved, and my dad wasn't doing very good, especially after mom passed. So within a couple of weeks, we lost dad as well. But it was a lot different journey because, on one hand, we were expecting that. And to see dad suffer was very difficult physically, even though emotionally, of course, he was suffering, but physically, he was declining a lot. So he passed within a few weeks, and my family was just reeling because we had my aunt pass. So my cousins, who are a few years younger than I am, they're reeling about their loss, and we're still trying to deal with that, which was my mom's younger sister. Then my mom passes, and then a couple weeks later, my dad's pass it. He's passing. And a few weeks after that, my grandfather passed on my dad's side. That was the last of the grandparents. So it was a lot of losses within a very, very short amount of time. But the way I grew up, I'm really, really grateful for because we talked about death in our family. And I knew what my parents wanted, as far as what kind of things they may want towards the end of their life. So it wasn't a topic that we didn't discuss. And we didn't love discussing it. It wasn't like we sat around and discussed it all the time. But I did at least have an idea of, what their wishes were. And my mom had a healthy idea of the afterlife. My dad was really nervous passing. When my mom went, I think that helped my dad to let go. So it's a real interesting story because for my dad, I was able to let him go so much easier. My mom has been very hard. My mom and I, for those people who don't know, she's my best friend. We talked every day on the phone for sometimes for hours. It was real hard seeing her with these last few years struggling with my dad. And while I'm grateful they're together, part of me feels a little jealous, like, I want my mom back and I want my dad back. But the identity shifters really, really came pivotal once my parents passed because now you don't you're living in the world differently. When you lose a parent, it's a whole different thing. Like the miscarriages was one feeling, and this is why I'm kind of paralleling both stories. And then the
Mhm.
parents are a whole nother thing. And especially, parents that you were really close to. I was very lucky to have such a great supporting system for me as I grew up. So the loss for mom has been my hardest loss. And I've done a lot of stuff on healing and growing and all those things. And while that wasn't very long ago, because that was just June of 2022, I still feel like I came still a long way. But a lot of the journey that I had with my miscarriages helped me to understand a little bit how to navigate this. But it was still such new waters and a new road because my life became way different after my mom, was gone. Another kind of area of grief was, I was lucky enough that the house I grew up in, my parents were still in. So I got lucky that when I go home, or, when I did this in the past, then I was going home. That was my home. So, not only did the identity change for now, I don't have parents to help guide me in the world or have that support system of my best friend there. I'm
Yeah.
also wrapping up my childhood home and I'm wrapping up all those memories and all those things. And that is a huge loss as well. So it's been really interesting the way I would identify and say what the meaning of grief is, because there's a lot of angles in this story with it.
Yeah, there are so many angles. And just watching your journey, you've come so far over this time. Because I remember the beginning of it, it was like very impactful for me too, because I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is like so hard because I
Yeah.
didn't personally have a close relationship with my mother. So it's so different and it's hard for me to identify with that because I don't have that connection and I haven't experienced as big of a loss as you have, of course. So it's just to see that it just the amount of emotion that comes from it is so big. And to
Yeah.
see how far you've come and how much you've grown over that time is just so amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's hard. It's
Mhm.
an up and down journey. Grief is such a journey. There's just, when I would go back to my miscarriages, one of the number one things I learned with grief was that you learn to hold both. So your life goes on, people go on, the world goes on. You think the world should stop. It's really funny, especially when I was in my miscarriages, because it was like, this is so big, the world needs to stop. But the world doesn't stop, of course, and people have lives and all this kind of stuff. So you learn the duality of holding both, holding the fact of there's moments where you're in happiness with people. There's moments where friends of mine had babies, and I had to also hold the pain of, gosh, why not me? Why not me with this? I want this too. It's the same now, like if I see people with their parents or with their mom or their dad, it's the same thing. You miss that connection. And like you said, in your case, maybe you don't have the same kind of connection. So it's very an interesting dynamic. Holding the duality of both has been my mantra, trying to, allow myself to have those moments of joy and allow myself those moments of deep sorrow. And the littlest thing might set me off. It could be a picture that I forgot was in the house. It's been in the house forever, but for whatever reason, I've been down to go pick a book up and there's mom's picture and, it tanks me for the day.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's really about, for me, it had been really about identifying that I'm a different person and I'm walking this world differently. I'm still a daughter, but now I feel a little on the orphan side, if that is a word to bring into to it, because I know orphan has a lot of different definitions. But it does feel like, okay, now I have to make decisions without somebody that can be my sounding board or my person to, I may have to lean on different people that are around me. I'm so grateful for friends like you, and friends like in our homeschool groups and some of my really good friends that have just been there for me, thick and
Mhm.
thin.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's also required and asked of me to be very vulnerable because it's not easy for me to just say, wow, I'm having a really hard day here and I'm struggling and I want to talk about it and try to put words to my emotions and let people in on kind of a vulnerable space. Because sometimes you feel, people might make judgments about that, or maybe in the moment they're uncomfortable and they don't know what to say. I've been there. I've been on the other side of that and not known what to say to people. It's a hard journey.
It
Absolutely. Yeah.
is so hard. What are some of the things that um, tools you use to actually transform and heal this grief and come as far as you have on this journey?
Yeah. Okay. I was really thinking about this question earlier because there's a lot of different things I've done.
Mm.
So I guess it just depends on, for me, I'm a very spiritual seeker and I'm kind of a believer in all philosophies and angles. So I like to pull different things in from all sorts of things. So a lot of my journey was more in the spiritual kind of metaphysical, round. So for this one with mom and dad, I found myself suddenly wanting to, because I had a lot of time during the day. My days were spent with, like when I cleaned bathrooms, I'd be on the phone with my mom visiting. We could visit 2, 3 hours on the phone, no problem, right? Just talking about our day or whatever. And now suddenly this big hole has happened, right? I've got a lot of silence in my world. So I'm thinking, how can I fill this silence? So the silence for me got filled by starting to do programs. I started signing up for anything that, struck me for free self-help, free improvement. Maybe somebody was talking about grief, maybe they weren't. For me, I was going through all of it because I'm kind of a believer in, if something kind of sparks me, I'm going to get some angle out of it to help me with the grief, right? So
Mhm.
one of the things I started out by doing was signing up myself a sound healing class, right? I started to go, well, what's sound healing about? I'm really into crystals. Why not see what crystal bowls are about?
Mhm.
And I didn't realize at the time how hugely healing that was going to be for me. Because as I'm doing the sound bowls and I'm learning how to do them, I'm learning how they're working, and then I'm sitting and I'm making those sounds, all those sounds are healing me and making me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
And, at first it was maybe me talking to people about it when I could, but I just quickly realized that, if I'm going to help myself, I have to do it myself. Like there's nobody that's going to be, 3 a.m. in the morning is going to be able to say what I need and be all that I might need. And so I needed to start figuring out ways to do it myself. And so my crystal bowls are huge for me. When I feel a lot of grief, my number one thing I do is I identify the emotions, my number one thing. So sometimes my mind will go, no, 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 you're crying again. No, 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 I'm so tired of crying. And instead I've been trying to go, okay, I'm feeling really sad right now. I feel grief. I need to cry, or I need to process. I might need to sit down for a minute, or maybe I need to do movement. I go to the bowls and I do the movement. So my first thing is I identify with grief, right? I identify whatever that emotion is, to try to bring it in instead of repel it out, because I'm really trying hard to move it out. Another thing that hugely helped me, especially back with my miscarriages and stuff, was the EFT, which is the emotional freedom technique. And it's where you tap along acupuncture points that go along, your head and your eye. You can look them up online and they'll give you a little chart. And you say different affirmations or words around it. EFT was huge because at times when you're feeling like you're going to go into a panic and you can't get out of your emotion,
Mhm.
EFT, by tapping those lines, it's a lot like acupuncture, and it can really get your body back into relaxing down so that it can actually process what it needs to do. Another thing I really wanted to share with everybody is the Bach flower essences. Those are just pivotal for me. There's these little vials of liquid, and you can get them at any of the natural grocer stores, co-ops, things like that, online, all over online. Those really helped. I mean, I like homeopathy too, of course, don't get me wrong. And homeopathy is a lot like Bach flower essences in the sense. But the thing I liked with the Bach flower essences is they really go to the emotional, on all their bottles, they have the emotions on there. So like feel secure or
Mhm.
neutralize grief, right? And you can combine them and take them. But for whatever reason, for my body system, totally worked. I mean, kicked me just, it just kicks my emotions either up if I need an uplift, or down if I am feeling a little too panicky or or whatever it is. So the Bach flower essences were really, really big. Now a modality when I would actually go over to somebody, or not over, but I go see somebody like at a doctor. I'm really into like a naturopath type doctors though. So massage therapy was fantastic for me, and I attribute really having my daughter due to acupuncture. It's many, many, many weeks of going twice a week for acupuncture to get my systems in alignment. My
Mm.
acupuncturist became one of my very good friends during my pregnancy journey, and pre-pregnancy journey before Kaylee. I can't say enough about acupuncture. It just worked so, so well for me. And it was one of the pivotal moments that I was finally able to carry a child and, have her. Why I haven't done acupuncture for the grief, I'm not really sure. This one for me with mom and dad, it feels a little more like I'm not quite ready for a lot of the physical. I feel like it's a lot of the emotional. I've gone in for a few massages, but massages have changed a little bit for me. My body must feel a little bit of the trauma, maybe with some of the hospital things, but I feel a little more jumpy and a little harder time settling
Yeah.
for whatever reason. Yeah. So those were some of the things. I mean, I've got a lot of things I did
Mm.
because I threw everything at it because
Yeah.
I wanted to feel better. But those were some of my big, big, big ones.
Yeah. And you're also doing an art class, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
the art class was incredible. Yeah. So
Mm.
yeah, doing an art class, but it's interesting. So it's called intentional art, and it's doing art in a way that you're not doing art to make it look great because everybody's going to see it and you're going to go sell it and you're going to do all this kind of stuff, right? It's more about taking your emotions that you're feeling on the inside, maybe even emotions you don't know you're feeling yet, right? So you have these emotions on the inside, and you do these different ways and different practices to bring the art outside of you. And there's ways you can do it to where, for example, to give you an idea, would be I take my hand with a pen and I'm not telling my hand, draw a tree. I'm just watching my hand as the observer draw whatever shapes and flows that it does on the canvas. It doesn't have to look amazing. It's just doing its thing. And by you doing that thing, it's getting that energy out into the movement. And that's what I'm learning about right now is this intentional art. And it's a way to express the grief or the sadness or, whatever it doesn't feel good. Or maybe it's also to feel good, maybe you'd want to express it in that way. I'm working at it to work out this direction with it, and I'm loving it. It's really good. So intentional art's a whole different thing I never even knew about until a few months ago, and I love it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so this art class is not centered around grief, it's anything.
It really is anything. Yeah. No, she didn't center it around grief. She centered it around like her class that I'm taking is it's a 6 months course, excuse me, a 6 month course where I've got a painting, I've got a canvas, and we do things that get your movement going. Sometimes she'll put music on, sometimes she'll be doing drumming, sometimes she'll do symbols. I'm sure eventually she'll do crystal bowls, all this stuff. Get your body to move.
Mhm.
And then you're going to have this one canvas for 6 months. And as you're feeling the emotions you're feeling, you're painting little different pieces and parts of the canvas. And some of those drawings kind of go underneath the painting. So, all those lines and scribbles and all that kind of stuff, that's going to get disappeared into the painting. But it's kind of infusing your emotions into the painting is the way I'm seeing it. So it's a 6 month course of me doing the working it out. As you guys can see on my background here, I've done Oracle Circle. So Colette Baron Reed, I want to also really give a shout out to her too, because I'm doing her Oracle School course. And again, it's not a grief, or it's not a grief course. It's just a course on getting you to know yourself better, to be able to get down in there and be the person that you can be for yourself. And you're not having to rely upon outside circumstances. You're not having to rely upon everything in your expectation world to be perfect. For example, like for me, yeah, would I like my mom and dad back? 100%. I can't fix that. No one can fix that. So it's me processing that and learning a way to bring my emotions together with that, if that makes sense.
Yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. I did a lot of the expansion principle as well. That was a really another pivotal course, which is a really good friend of mine, Alexis. Um, Her course was fantastic, and that was actually one of the first courses that I had done. And she talks a lot about energy healing, energy modalities. And again,
Mhm.
it's not another thing that she's focusing on grief. So anybody could do it. But sometimes people that might be searching for things that are grief related might go online and then look up grief to only discover certain things. Where if you can kind of branch out of that a little bit, so much of this encompasses grief and the emotional journey with it. And
Mhm.
there's just a lot of ways to go about healing yourself. And it doesn't always focus on the story all the time, which I like that because there's times when we don't want to focus on the story. Our mind wants a break, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I was thinking back to a story you were telling me about going to, I forget what it's called, the event that it was, but you did speak to some mediums
Mm.
to communicate with your family members, right?
I did. I did. I did. Yeah, we went down to Mount Shasta, and I can't remember exactly what the psychic fair that was at the time. That was a really interesting story because it popped up on my Facebook feed. I didn't even know what was going to happen, and it was just
Mm,
literally like 2 days before. And I had invited Alexis to go down there
yeah.
because she does a lot of that work. So we got her to talk down there. But what was great was when we were down there, I just thought, I'm going to sign up for everything. Just going to talk to people, and I'm going to sign up and see what, happens. And I had some really good connective experiences with people talking to me and giving me information. And what's so funny is my mom didn't come through right away. My mom and dad didn't. It was my grandfather who passed back in the 90s, who I had a very close relationship with, who passed, who was the first one to come through. And I had to laugh because in my mind, I'm thinking, I just want to talk to my mom and dad. Don't get me wrong, Grandpa, I wanted to talk to you too. But, with mom passing so soon, I really just felt this need that I wanted to connect with her. But I signed up for a session afterwards with a gal so she did a free session. I should back up. And my grandfather came back. We were in a group, and I got picked out of the group with my grandfather having a message. And then I signed up with a session from her. And of course, then my parents had came through, and it's all very healing. And I know sometimes people feel like maybe they're held back talking to, a medium, but there's certain things and there's a certain feeling that if you can open up to do it, and you can go forward and you can really hear this information when you're open your mind up to all possibilities,
Mhm.
you know when this person comes through to you. You just know. There's just things that are said, or there's a feeling and a vibe that happens. Mediumship to me is highly, highly recommended. And it's kind of funny because I wasn't going with the mediumship angle for some reason today in our talk, because I was thinking about how do you do it on your own. But
Mhm.
those experiences like that, they're life changing because, there's messages that they're trying to get through, to you. And if you can just pop out of that grief bubble for a moment and really open up, it can be very, very healing for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly. That did help you a lot when you connected with them. It makes you realize that we are always connected. It doesn't matter if it's in the physical or not. We're still always connected no matter what.
Yeah. Yes. 100%. Yeah, mom and I used to joke about when she was going to pass, or if I go first or she goes first, we were going to really try hard to get messages back to each other. That was like a pact we made for our whole life. And she, we used to joke about, why can't we just have one more phone call after somebody goes, right? Just that one phone call, just to know they're okay, to know that the transition happened. Because while we have many, many beliefs and we feel like we know, we don't really know, and that's hard. At least for me, somebody who we want tangible proof, right? And some of us need that. And that one phone call is really an interesting concept because you can really connect and talk with your loved ones on the other side. And you don't need mediums to do it. Some people do because maybe they don't believe they can. But
Mm,
you can do that. There's many, many ways to do it. One of the things is, look up, if you're not familiar with, automatic writing. There's books that people have written recently that really surprised me about automatic writing, about how when you just can quiet your mind and again become the observer of your hands. It's just like the intentional art process. Become the observer of your hands. Go to a keyboard, see what comes out. It might feel like you're having this internal dialogue in your mind and you're like, this can't be happening. I'm making this story
Mhm.
up. But it's like a muscle. The more you kind of you try it, the more it gets easier and easier. And then maybe a week or two goes by and you reread one of those paragraphs that you wrote out on a dialogue or recorded on a phone or however you want to do it, right? Get out a piece of paper and a notepad. You will be kind of surprised at the information that comes through, that you will realize that's just not you having a dialogue. There's ways to communicate for sure, if that is something that people are open to. And I feel like we all are. I feel like we all are, because we desperately, want to seek out the people we love. Of
Mhm.
course, we miss them terribly. And, like for me, I wanted to make sure she was okay. And I missed having conversations with her. So yeah, what kind of ways would be open for you to do that, depending upon where your beliefs are? But I believe it's really healing to do that. It can even start out with just having that silly dialogue, like, hey, what
Mhm.
you been doing over there? And see if there's an answer.
Yep.
And or maybe you're hearing in your head, what have you been doing today? I mean, tell me more about what happened here. And you're thinking, is this in my mind? But what if you played with the dialogue? Then what?
Mhm.
Open yourself up to possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can do it, it can be very healing.
I agree. I agree. And so
Yeah.
many of these things people generally aren't aware of, like the automatic writing. I totally forgot about automatic writing until Anna mentioned it in the last episode. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I totally
Yeah.
remember about
Hmm.
automatic writing. But there's
Hmm.
yeah, there's so many tools that are available to us that so many people don't even know about.
Yeah.
And it would be so healing, if people are open to it, of course. So healing for people to just look into these things.
We live in a society where we're really quick. We're in a
Mhm.
fast, fast, fast. I call it the fast food society. We want everything quick, quick, quick.
Yep.
And, when we settle down for a minute and we can get our minds to be quiet for a minute, and it's really hard to do when you've lost somebody. I mean, I know that I could not settle my mind down for a while. It was hard. And there's still days even now I'm like, the busier I am, the better.
Mhm.
But when you can do this, your healing jumps, and sometimes your body doesn't want to catch up with that, and you've got to honor that. But when you can bring your body and mind into alignment together, it's huge.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Agree.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
agree. Yeah, and you're so blessed to have known a lot of this stuff before,
yeah,
actually growing up. Like so many people weren't raised around any of that,
yeah,
communication with the other side information or any of that. I remember as a kid I saw on some TV programs. And
yeah.
back then it was like, ooh,
Right.
kind of like freaky.
I remember there was like a TV show. I don't know if it was called like The Other Side or something.
Uh-huh.
James Van Prague at one point had a
Yeah.
show.
Mhm.
He was one of them too. And I used
Yeah.
to watch all of that. So yeah, for the people who don't know me that are listening, yeah, I grew up with all this stuff. My aunts are into it. My mom was into it. My mom grew up Catholic. She didn't grow up with this. But she was around during the 70s and 80s when all this stuff was really coming into light and everybody was really playing with the self-help movement.
Yeah.
Even though, really when you go back through history, I mean, it's been here the whole time. It just goes through waves of awareness in our society and our culture, right? In the
Hmm.
70s and 80s, really into the self-help stuff. So I was lucky, and I got to watch my mom do that. And then I was so curious. But yeah, I had a lot of things as a child, though, that really made me know that there was much more than here. So
Hmm.
there was a lot of circumstances that had happened to me that I just knew there was more to it.
Yeah.
Um, whether it was knowing something ahead of time or something, seeing something or hearing something, I always had those. And you just go through different times in your life where hey, some people around you, when you hang around with different people, they weren't open to that. And so for a while, maybe I shut that off a little bit. And I'll be the first to admit, when I was going through my miscarriages, I got pretty angry. I got pretty angry because I knew all of this stuff, right? And I'm thinking, gosh, I know this stuff. And I felt like, why is this happening to me type thing? I didn't understand. And I thought if I just think positive, especially coming back being a child of the 80s, that kind of idea. So I got kind of mad at the universe a little bit and really thought, why? Why? I really felt like I got into that victim mentality of when it happens over and over to you, you really start going, what is happening? And so you turn your stuff down a little bit. You turn it off for a while. I try to stuff it down and it doesn't stay down though. I will tell you. It
Mhm.
comes back up. And at some point you have to take into accountability who you really are and put it out on the table and hope the people around you embrace it and understand that. And be okay with goodbyes sometimes. I kind of wasn't a person that was okay with goodbyes. And I had a lot of goodbyes with grandparents and different things. But saying goodbye to my mom was a tough one, really, really tough one. And it was one that I wasn't ready for. I didn't feel like I was ready for it.
Yeah.
And it happened. And I've had to look at that. And I've had to look at some of the people that have stepped out of my life during that time. There's been friends that have stepped out of my life and be okay with the goodbyes. And I'm kind of a person who's not okay with goodbyes, but I've learned the value that things change and I still love those people anyway. So the goodbyes are really interesting. And sometimes we have to say goodbye to the things like my mom, who that would be a thing, but a person that was really, really close to me and realized the gift and learning the value sometimes of saying goodbye. And that it was time for me to go on a journey without her. And
Mhm.
one realization, and I know I shared it with you, it was really pivotal. It took me about 4 months though to really get to this, but I really feel it was a compounding of a lot of prior losses. Is the fact that you're here for a reason. You're here for maybe whatever lessons you need to do.
Mhm.
And at some point, time goes by fast, and I'm going to be over there before I know it.
Yeah.
And I can be over there and be with her, and I really, really, really want to, right? That doesn't mean like I'm wanting to go there right now, right? But my heart will hurt and want to go over there. And people around me, that don't know me well will go, oh no, are you thinking this? And I'm like, no, I'm not thinking this. But what
Mhm.
I'm thinking about is that we're going to be over there soon enough.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look back on my life here and what I'm doing here and regret my time if I just put myself away and
Mhm.
just be lost in my grief. Then and I'm not growing and I'm not taking life by the horns and going, what am I doing? Why
Yeah.
don't I learn a whole bunch of stuff? Why don't I love the people that are around me the most I can every day? Why am
Mhm.
I not being more of my authentic self? Maybe I need to say some things. I'm a recovering people pleaser and I'm still doing it, and I'm learning though.
Mhm.
So if I live life now and I do the best I can now before I know it, I am going to be over there and I will be with them and I will be able to connect with them then. And if I'm being on this grief journey without living in the present moment now, I'm not seeing my daughter grow up that I waited for 5 years to get. I waited for her for so long to come.
Mhm.
So while the sadness needs to be there, it was very pivotal for me to realize time is short and it can feel really long when I'm trying to wait to go back and connect with mom, and that can feel very encompassing. But
Mhm.
that was my pivotal change in my identity shift was, okay, I got to start saying yes to the things that scare me a little bit and put myself out there more. I've got to share more with people about who I am and what I might believe in. And
Mhm.
I know I can be friends with all sorts of philosophies and religions and ideas. I'm exploring. This is what I'm here to do.
Mhm.
So that's was really pivotal for me. And I hope that can help somebody else to think, yeah, it feels long. But really, when I saw my mom's life come to her ending, and same with my dad, man, it was suddenly very short the time that when we started talking about our memories when they were leaving. I thought, oh my gosh, we weren't supposed to be here at this point yet, but it was.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to look at it in different ways. And some days are better than others. So
Mm-hmm.
today you're catching me on a better day. There's days I'm a mess. I cry. I shut myself off in my room. But then I
Mm-hmm.
remind myself, and I have people around me, my husband, my daughter, my friends that help remind me of why we're going forward. We're going forward. And this is, this has got to be a growth journey I'm walking on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is such an example for so many people, for Kate, for your daughter, sorry,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
for your
yeah. No,
daughter, and for just like everyone around you, and for your family members. And, they can see what you're going through. And just, I don't know, it's such a great example. And then people know what they can do when they experience these things. I mean, when your daughter one day loses you or your
yes.
husband, it's going to be such a big thing for her. Like she can remember that and remember the process you went through and
Yes.
think about the growth that you went through during that time too. And I think about that with Briar or my kids too.
Yeah.
Dropping names, I'm dropping names. Most
I know.
people know me.
Most people know me too. So yeah, that's all right.
I'm so used to name dropping, but now with this podcast, I'm like, you gotta be careful with
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I think about that with them and I talk to them about this all the time and I'm just like, one day I won't be here and we just never know when that's going to happen. So, it's important to talk about because some kids and some families lose, their parents super early on, when they're kids and no one knows how to deal with that or process that. So for people to see this and for especially kids to see this, I think it's so important and so important to talk about it too in this kind of forum. So
Mhm.
people can have the big discussions and can talk about everything, because some kids are like, wow, I had no idea I could have lost my parent at the
Yeah.
age of 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and I have friends who went through that when they were young and they're about my age, in their 40s, and they're still going through stuff because it was such a shocker, such a tender age to experience that at.
We need to have this conversation with
Yeah.
our kids. We don't need to wait until they're older, like it can
Mhm.
be more of a normalcy to have a conversation about this. I was watching somebody being interviewed on Gaia and they were talking about a tradition. And I don't remember if it was like, I want to say it was maybe Guatemala or Peru. It was one of those areas that they were saying that when you're born, they automatically tell you you're here, you're walking your path to dying. The minute you're born, you're walking your path to dying. And I thought, that is crazy. So instead of saying I'm walking my path and I'm living it, they're honoring the fact that they're here for a short time, that this is their time, that really home for them is over here. And it's like a vacation over there versus, how
Yeah.
I think I said that backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No.
yeah, so it's an interesting way to bring into the culture. And it doesn't have to be something that's a serious conversation that's going to scare any of the younger kids. It's
Hmm.
a conversation to make sure that, you talk about it a little bit. So that way it's not so shocking when it does happen because it's going to happen. You
Hmm.
know, one thing I would like to share before I forget to share this that I think really came to light, especially during more of my miscarriage times, but it comes up even now too. My husband and I term it the grief flipping. And it's where you have a conversation with someone and someone asks you, how are you doing? And, you start telling them about your story. And then suddenly the story changes and then they come into to the conversation and they share their whole experience, and it's not in the right timing of sharing the experience. Maybe you kind of get interrupted into their experience instead. And it's very hard when you're going through grief when someone's asking you and you really want to share something when someone turns their story around on you too quick. The grief flipping's a little too quick. There's a timing to it that I really think I became more aware of it even myself. And I think a lot of times we do it because we don't know what to say. And we want to tell the other person a story that we're going through because hey, I'm going through this and I want you to know that I'm feeling this with you.
Hmm.
But sometimes it feels a little out of balance, right? And it feels like, boy, I really wasn't listened to or validated. It was kind of like we went into your story, and now suddenly I'm in a lot of pain, but now I'm turning around and I'm having to kind of console the other person because now they're going through
Yes.
pain. And I'm like, I don't have the capacity to do both here for a minute. I'm going through this. I need a minute to process this. And
Mhm.
so I really try hard when I hear people's stories to be very present, look them in the eye. And if I do feel the need to say to them, I've walked this journey, I might say to them, I've walked this journey with you. I want you to know that just so you know I can really relate and understand. And we'll get back to my story later, but I want you to know I'm walking through this story with you because I've done this. I've been here with you. And then let them go on with the story a little bit because I found that sometimes it was so draining that people would flip around their story a little bit or
Mhm.
maybe avoid you altogether because that's another thing. I've seen people just flat out avoid even asking about
Mhm.
the elephant in the room because
Yeah.
they don't know what to say and they don't know if you are emotionally wanting to talk about it. So it's hard, right? It's really
Mhm.
hard. For me, I found it's more uncomfortable to have people avoiding me than just to flat out say, "You doing all right? Are you doing all right?" Or, I know this really big thing happened to you. Do you even want to talk about it today?
Mhm.
Maybe just say, hey, ask them that way. You don't have to ask them like, wow, how are you doing? Should we get into the nitty gritty? Because there's times I can't get into the nitty gritty. There's times, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm in the middle of something and I just look at them like, I'm doing all right now, but I'll go more into this with you later, but just having somebody check in on you a little bit is huge, is so,
Yeah.
so huge, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
So,
sure.
the thing that I find is that everybody that does come up and is super comfortable with it, they come at you quick and fast at the beginning. Now that I'm 7, 8 months in, the support's not there as much. You don't have people dropping off food or gift cards or
Mhm.
things, right? There are things, all these things that so help. Suddenly it gets real quiet about 3, 6 months in. So, especially for my fellow mamas that have lost babies,
Mhm.
people forget. They forget. It's not like we're celebrating every year an anniversary.
Yeah.
It gets forgotten. The story's forgotten. And so check in on your friends that are having those losses later. Like set that reminder on your phone. Like even, when someone loses a parent or something later, um, put a reminder, maybe 6 months on the phone to check in with your friend about it. Check
Yeah.
in with the family member, have it ring you later, and just send them out a check-in. I have a girlfriend who does this from up in the Tigard area, and she checks in on me later. She does the things later. She bought me a massage just like a month ago and goes, you know what? You need a massage. I'm like, I do, thank you. She goes, I'm just doing this for you. And it's those check-ins later that are just hugely supportive for people because it's quiet and it's in the quiet when we break more. At the beginning, you have all these people lift you up more. I'm seeing on camera, I'm having a light or a rainbow. I don't know where it's coming from. I'm trying to move so it's not on my face and it's moving with me.
Oh, it's magical. It's magical.
I don't know if it's showing up for everybody, but I'm trying to move and I'm going, why is it moving with me? I don't know. So you know, maybe it's my mom coming around going, hello, everybody.
I was wondering. I was wondering, I'm like, I wonder if she's gonna make an appearance.
Yeah, maybe this is it. It's around my mouth, and I keep trying to hide it. So anyway,
Yeah. I
yeah,
wanted to touch on that grief flipping thing too, because
yeah,
that's
please.
so interesting because not only do people do that during loss, and I think I'm gonna just clarify what you mean. So it's like when you're sharing your story and someone's like, I've had that happen too. Is that it?
Yes,
So you
yeah,
see people doing that a lot just
yeah.
in general, like with
But it's I've had it happen too, but then they go, this is what happened to me. It's not that
yes.
insert little quick to let you know. It's more like now they're off and running on their own story, and you're like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
keep going. Sorry,
And
that's
even in general, like in normal conversation, when you're like, oh, this happened and it was really hard, that happens just in normal conversation. Say you lose a job, someone's like, yeah, I lost a job and it was so hard. And people go off on that tangent. I think it's just a communication thing that's so embedded in society that people don't think about. Because I notice it when I started noticing it in myself, I
mhm.
started noticing it all the time when I was having conversations with people and I'm just like, wait, I was like, in that space of like talking about this and then all of a sudden we're on another tangent. But
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
something a lot of people are not conscious of, you know, and it's a great aspect of conscious communication to kind of like reel that in.
Hmm.
And I guess, you know, we've talked about this before, like just being there for someone. Are you wanting me to listen to you right now, or are you wanting me to give you advice or respond? And I think that is so key in communication just in general, but especially during this, like with this topic. I think that would be so helpful for people to put that out front in the open.
Yeah. And I want to say on that question, so interesting because sometimes if your question's too broad when you're asking somebody, so like a lot of people ask, what can I do for you? Just tell me what I can do for you. I'm like, I don't even know what I can do for myself.
Yeah.
I have no capacity to tell somebody, okay, go cook me dinner, clean my house, and do this kind of stuff, right? I mean, I'm thinking I don't even have the capacity to respond that way. So asking, like you're saying, like how how can I respond? Or I don't remember what you just said a minute ago, but I thought that was perfect because it was the way you made it point blank. So it's just like a yes or no kind of question, like
Yeah.
yes, I'm ready to talk about this and I need to talk about it, or no. It's not trying to suddenly decide and organize 50 things, right? And
Hmm.
everybody means so well. I almost hate to even bring some of this stuff because even somebody just saying anything is a lot for people. But there's just ways that can be said in an intentional ways that are little tweakers that can maybe help your next experience with someone else go, because it's not necessarily that people said anything wrong, it's just
Yeah.
reflections back, a big thing with, and this can go again, I go back to my miscarriages with this, but people will say the things, well, it just wasn't meant to be.
Mm,
And I was just like, ah, and I'd kind of nod my head and kind of, but I thought, oh my goodness, if I had a quarter for every time someone told me that, that felt really not validating.
hmm.
Your baby wasn't meant to be. How do you take that? I mean, yeah, it was a rough comment because I know people are trying to again, they're trying to be supportive, but it's that one dug. That one really just like dug in there. And I'm like, oh, dang it. But I just tried to hold the capacity of knowing people just didn't know what to say. And I didn't know what to
Mhm.
say. And I really don't. And I'm sure friends of mine that have had miscarriages before me, I'm sure I did not do well responding because I really didn't have the experience. I wish someone would have filled me in on how to, communicate back during those times and be more supportive. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you hear that a lot. Like sometimes you hear people say, well, it was their time to go,
Yeah.
or they were old anyway, and stuff like
Oh,
that. And
that one. That one.
people
That one
don't
right
even
there.
know they're saying it. They're just like, I'm awkward, I'm uncomfortable, I don't know what to say, so I'm just gonna spit something out.
And I said it. And I have said it. And I
I have to.
regret I've said it. So I am sorry to all the people that are listening that know me
Yeah.
that I have said that because that does not help. It does not
Yeah.
help. Somebody should have told me that that did not help a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't. And someone who is old, yeah, that doesn't that oh, they had a good life. Okay, yeah, they did. But
Yeah.
it's just, I think what it really comes down to is trying to validate people's feelings, whatever those feelings are. So some of that's going to be hard to figure out how can you just validate? But a lot of times I just find if I can just get myself to be in present mode, get myself a little grounded, and just really hear what they're saying and go off of that. And if you don't know what to say, nod in agreement and encouragement and maybe even say, yeah, I'm listening, continue. What else do you have to
Mhm.
say? It can be something like that. Or I've even said to people sometimes, I'm really at a loss for words here.
Mhm.
I want to support you and I'm here to support you.
Yeah.
You want to continue saying and talking about what you want to talk about because there's no answers for the things and these huge heartaches that we go through. There's no answer for them.
Mhm.
But we have to talk about them as a society. I mean, COVID brought this up to the huge forefront for us. People were passing away right and left, right? A lot
Mhm.
of our friends have had friends and family that have passed due to COVID stuff. And I think it's really time to bring this out into the light. Let's talk about it a little bit and give each other some grace, give each other grace over things you don't understand about another person. Start asking better questions. As a society, we're being asked to ask better questions about the things we don't understand.
Mm-hmm. It's
Yeah.
so true. It's so true. I've been doing a lot of reflecting over that over the past year, and there's just so many areas that I didn't realize I was quote unquote lacking in that sense, just because yeah, I mean, sometimes we're just unfamiliar with certain topics and certain things that come up. And yeah, there's a lot of awkwardness just not around death, but around a lot of things, like even people who talk about wanting to not be here in this realm anymore. There's a lot of stuff around that where people are like, what should I do,
Mhm.
with this situation? Like, should I call for help? Like, how do
Right.
I need to be there for them? And that's another thing I'm adding to this podcast, just so we can have that awareness around it, because it's so important. And this
It's
whole,
so hard, so hard. Sorry, keep going.
yeah, it is. And I was also thinking about what we were just talking about on how we can help people who have lost others. That's a topic I want to keep going on too, because it'll be helpful. Because I noticed with you in the beginning, when you had just lost your parents, I was asking questions that weren't really getting responses. Like, because I was doing that whole, is there anything I can do for you?
Yeah.
I'm here for you kind of thing, but not thinking about you possibly being blank in the moment, like, what is this anything? Like, what? I don't know. I don't know what I need. And having a list.
You go in a numb state.
Yeah.
When you have a loss like that, and I know you've had losses, so you can go back to that. You go in a weird numb state. And because I had
Yeah.
so many in a short period of time, I think I was flabbergasted.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really dealt like with mom's passing because I got thrown right into dad's caregiving.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to shove it aside. I had to take care of dad. He needed this care that I had no idea what kind of care was going to be needed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I kind of went silent and mute around me for a while because my days were so filled up with decisions. And then once dad passed, for the next how many months, there's another element here that nobody kind of talks about. And it's the time where if you are the person that needs to take care of the estate, the will,
Yeah.
whatever's happening, there's a weird thing that happens that it's hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
really hard. When you're the person that's assigned to kind of take care of all the person's affairs, there's so much legality wise that's required of you, and you don't know what you're doing. So there would
Mm-hmm.
be days literally I would get up, I wouldn't even know what was going to happen that day, and I would get a phone call that would spur into another thing and another thing, and I have to run the bank and get this notary done or prove this happened. The days would go by so fast that I swear I wouldn't even remember that there was a sunrise and a sunset. I mean, it felt like I had a blink in a day. It was so crazy. So your family members and your friends are going through these things that sometimes they don't even know are going to come at them. So when they make commitments to like see you, they may say 4 months down the road, they may go, hey, we're going to go out to lunch, and they cancel. And then you say, okay, let's reschedule. And you might be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm gonna, it's fine. They're canceling. And then they cancel again. And then they
Mm-hmm.
cancel again. And you're starting to get mad because they're not calling you back or they're not responding. I'm here to tell you, it's not only the grief that they're dealing with, it's the wrap up afterwards and the constant conversations they're having to have with people. And it's people that don't care. It's banks and people that are wanting to know, well, what happened? Death certificates, they need this, they need that. It's funeral homes. So there's this really kind of period of time, and it goes on a lot longer than anybody talks about. So you see a movie, somebody dies, right? And they all sit there and they go, okay. And so you're allotted this amount, some lawyers sitting there, and you're allotted this amount, and you're allotted this amount. And then it's all done, right? It's done like in a matter of, second. That's not how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't how it happens at all. It will go on 6 months to a year because you have taxes you've got to pay that have to do with the family. You have to do with, your mom and dad or whoever it was that passed. They still owe those taxes and they owe this and they owe that. And you're just trying to figure out the world of commerce and how the death process goes, right? So there's a lot that happens. Like for me, for example, we decided to put off our celebration of life because my parents they want to party. That's how they want to go out. They want to party. That's if you people who knew my parents, that's how they are. But I wasn't ready for a party. I couldn't do a party come August. We
Mhm.
talked about it as a family. Do we want to do this? Come August, I was in no emotional state to do it. I couldn't make decisions to even organize a party.
Mhm.
Some people with their beliefs, they've got to do a burial right away. We cremated, so it was different, but they're making such crazy decisions that a year later, their emotions are just now coming up. So if that's advice to help anybody out with, they're going to give people a lot of grace because it's going to be one of those things that it's not going to just, when someone passes in their world and they're very responsible for all of this, it's going to take another year. They're going to be talking about it. They're going to have
Mhm.
feelings about it. My sister-in-law, it's been 5 years for her mom, and we still talk about it every year.
Mhm.
I put on my phone to remember every year to make sure I check in with her on it because that was a really big one. And her mom was not that old. Her mom was young.
Mhm.
So it's just not in the moment. And sometimes people need to cancel because, hey, maybe they were in the bathroom crying and they couldn't get themselves together that day.
Yeah.
And you hope your friends can understand they can't. They can't. That could be a year. That could be 5 years down the road. Yeah. We go through stuff that we don't know other people do. So give people the benefit of the doubt. We've got a lot of buckets around us we carry, and there's a lot of rocks in there. Yeah.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
So.
Is there anything else you want to cover?
Gosh, I know. I was trying to think because there was definitely some things that I really, really wanted to share today, but I don't think so. I just think that, be easy on yourself with the process, and yeah, I have a friend who had mentioned, that she was feeling really low and just wishing she was over there with her mom, and her
Mm.
friends got really panicked about it, and rightfully so, because you never know when it's going to happen. But do remember that sometimes we're just feeling really low and we just, yeah, I do. There's times I hope when I go to sleep at night, I hope I'm visiting them. My dreams will say that sometimes, but I hope that's the case. But be really easy on yourself with the time it takes. It takes a lot more time than anybody thinks,
Mm.
and it gets easier and it gets harder at sometimes, but just know that, just check in on people and don't be afraid to have conversations that can be really hard, because the more you have conversations that are hard, the easier it'll get easier and it'll get easier. And be present and just love everybody as much as you can, because time goes by fast. Make sure you're telling your friends, you're telling your family, you're telling everybody how much you love them all the time, and that they know, because you don't know when that sudden thing's going to happen and you won't get the chance to say it. You'll get the chance to say it in a different way to them. But
Mhm.
still, share the times. If someone says, hey, let's go to lunch, and it's a person you've been putting off lunch and you can do it and you feel good with it, do it. Yeah. Carpe diem is what I say. Yeah. So
Oh,
that would be what I would love to share with everybody. Try to love as much as you can and be easy on yourself.
yes, I so agree with that. I so agree. With all the sudden deaths I've gone through, I really think about that so much these days. I'm just like, you just never know. You just don't know what's around the corner. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it's not something to sit in and grieve over every single day, meaning we can't keep thinking about that and being like, I could die tomorrow or anything like that. But it's the truth. Like unexpected things happen
Yeah.
every day.
They
And
do. Unexpected things happen every day. So many people have stories. I mean,
Mhm.
there's just so many stories and they're all so validated.
Yep.
But the common theme in those stories is that we're usually hard on ourselves because we think we're emotional too much and that emotions aren't good. And emotions are good.
Yep.
Crying is okay and is more than okay. It's fantastic because you're emoting those emotions out, right? And we're just hard on ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah, we are.
So
We are.
many stories. Yeah. Yeah. So many stories of people lost. The common theme is is that we all seem to kind of have our signs that come from people on the other side. I hear that more and more and more, those common themes.
Yes, so true. Even
Yeah,
my family, when my grandfather died, they had signs. You know, it was so crazy. They had signs, and I
yeah,
didn't think they believed in any of that, but that is one thing we probably have in common across all religions and beliefs
yes,
is
yes,
the signs that were like, I swear that was my
yeah.
lover.
Yes. No, 100%. I have many friends who are Christianity, for example, and it's a common theme. It doesn't matter. Many family members that are Catholic,
Mm,
Baptist, all sorts of things. But the common theme we all always talk about is the signs. And the signs are just that you get. And that could be even another podcast we can all talk about. Because I am sure all these people who are coming on with their stories probably have a lot of amazing stories of these signs that are very unexplainable, right?
yes.
And they make you feel better, they make you
Mhm.
feel better. And it's very validating. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's so true.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about your experience.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for
Uh,
asking me to come on. Thank you for doing this podcast, Nicole, because it's going to get the story out. When I had heard you were going to do this, I was like, this is needed. It is so
mhm.
needed. We need to share our stories and we need to share how we're growing from these stories because these things that happen to us, they're big identity changers in our lives. Huge, huge, the biggest. And if we can see a little bit of a way to go through it, and we help each other go through it. It's this thread that goes and it's weaving our tapestry. And how can we help everybody else
Yeah.
who's going through it too? If we can help people any way. And that's what you're doing. So thank you, Nicole, for that so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, Andy, I love having you on here. I
Mm.
really appreciate you doing all of this and putting yourself out there for everyone to learn from you. And I love you so much.
I love you too so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, everyone. We're going to end today here. And I appreciate everyone for listening. And I hope everyone has an amazing evening. And we will be back on Thursday. All right. Bye, Andy.